failed us. Because birds and bees, they don't fuck. Welcome to Birds and Bees Don't Fuck, a podcast where we learn exactly how bad our formative sex education, or lack thereof, really was. I'm your host, Arielle Zadok. I'm a sex educator, intimacy coordinator, and a whole lot of other things. My guest today is a writer, artist, witch, and pole dancer in Los Angeles. She writes and produces a witchy feminist podcast and newsletter called Reclaiming. Welcome to the show, Sarah Spurlock.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good to be here. It's Gemini season.
Welcome to Gemini season.
This is my time. I have never met a mic. I'm a Gemini sun, Leo rising. I have never met a microphone I didn't love.
Oh, and there is not a microphone that doesn't love you. And the fun part is that this is going to be published on my birthday.
Yes. We love it.
We are coming with all of the energy between your Gemini season energy, your Leo rising energy, my Leo energy.
So much fire.
So much fire
in there.
Lots of witchiness going on.
We love it.
I up until the moment we just started yelling, I had Ruby under me playing with my dress. It's actually a drown. I'm just wearing a dressing gown right now,
and it looks fabulous.
It's my Catherine Delish. I'm obsessed with my Catherine Delish.
It's amazing.
So this podcast has been sponsored by Catherine Delish.
Yeah, non-spawn. Get at us if you want to sponsor this, Catherine.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so Sarah, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little suburb east of Sacramento. It's about 40 minutes outside. It was kind of like the Republican stronghold. So I'm sure you can imagine what kind of sex ed we had there.
Yeah.
It was a very, sprawling strip malls, mega churches, track homes type of place. But it was lovely. I did grow up, I loved my parents. I loved my, my school, my friends, my community, but it was very much that kind of ecosystem.
Mega churches kind of blow my mind. Like, especially as a Jew growing up and like seeing that from the outside.
Yeah.
Like the business, not that like Jews don't have businesses because like all religions are tax they
got to make their money for those
tax
yachts
evaders,
and
really
private jets.
But like the whole business of mega churches and that whole thing has always been like, it's so mind blowing as somebody who's like completely on the outside of anything Jesus related to like witness that is just like, what are y'all doing over there?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And y'all ain't nobody paying taxes?
No. And it is like insane the way that they advertised. It was, so every time you would walk in, it was like a gigantic like rock star concert. Like we had one of the most, like a really famous artist that was a famous guitarist, and the lights and the charisma. And it was just like, I'm not going to church. I'm going to like this mega, fully packed arena show. It was basically like, if Guns N' Roses mixed with, I don't know, some churchy messages. It was wild. It was a whole thing. And they used to advertise at the big mega mall that was in our town. So yeah, it was a whole ecosystem. It really was an ecosystem there.
I mean, still is. It's so wild. Yeah. I saw a meme the other day. Maybe I sent it to you. I don't know. We send each other memes, so probably. That is how friendships work these days. just a series of memes.
Yep.
But it was the meme was basically saying, I used to think I believed in Jesus, and then I went to my first concert and realized I just like live music.
Yeah, oh my God. It's just so true. And it's designed that way too. Like the music that they play, it is supposed to rise at certain parts to like get you involved and get you emotionally attached to the message.
Yeah.
And it's like hypnotism. It's so wild.
Literally. I mean, it's brainwashing.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I mean, religion to a degree is brainwashing.
My God. Yeah.
It's like, and I can't help but think if I grew up in a situation, first of all, where religion wasn't so pressed on me. Like I knew at the earliest of age it was bullshit. Like I never, ever once believed in it. I went to a Hebrew day school. So like this was down my throat early. And I never believed in any of it. And I never followed the rules. Like it'd be Yom Kippur where you're not supposed to have anything. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stockpile these snacks because I'm not fasting. This is ridiculous. This is so dumb. I just always thought all of it was so dumb. The rules made no sense. I was like, this is not like, I don't live in ancient times. My body can process foods. This is fine. So, I always thought about that, but like, I don't know, maybe if it was more appealing, maybe if it was like a concert, I'd be like, yeah, because I love to sing and I love to perform. So like, I don't know, maybe I would have been religious just because I like to perform.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how they got us in. That's really how they got us in. And they kept us in so I did like the youth group.
I did youth groups too.
Oh my God, they took us to like Disneyland and water parks for Jesus and whitewater rafting. And they did like really fun, cool stuff that, that's how they kept us. They roped us in with those big, gigantic concerts, and then they kept us with, trips to Disneyland for Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I did that too. I was in youth groups and like Jewish youth groups and all of that. And like, okay, cool. Like the trips were cool. Yeah. Anytime we did anything religious, I was like, I'm out. Like if there was something that was like, maybe if my friends were doing it, I would do it, but I'd be like,
as soon as the sermon comes,
cool.
You're like, all right, that's my cue. Bye.
I found like these old photos not that long ago I totally forgot that I did this, but it was like what is it called? Oh, it was like some weekend away with like a bunch of Jews. It was like all the youth groups, and it starts with a C, and I can't think of what it was called. But anyway, it was like this weekend away. And like I would just find people to hook up with and shit. Like I think I started like hooking up with some kids through that.
That's what a lot of kids did.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're wanting us to like be taking communion. In your case, I don't know what it was for us, but like we just sucking dicks.
Yeah.
But it was like it was cool because I was like meeting people and whatever, and like hooking up with dudes. But I was like, I hate all of this religion stuff. Yeah. I hate every bit of it. Yeah. And I don't like any of you because you like this and you are into it and I am not into it. My parents just made me come. And also, might find a boy to hook up with.
Yeah. Well, and I think I was just such a people pleaser.
Oh, me too.
I have that oldest daughter syndrome where I just like, I got the good grades. I went to the youth group. I abide, I followed the rules, did everything I was supposed to. And then now I'm here. I have a feminist witchy podcast where we talk about like lady demons and shit like that. So
yeah, that
took a hard turn.
I gotta tell you, that's not the experience of my sister as the oldest daughter. She very much did whatever the fuck she wanted.
Yeah.
The experience of all three kids in my family is really different because my sister would like party and do whatever, and she would like tell my parents things, and then she'd get in trouble, and she's like, okay, but don't you want to know what I'm doing?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like you, like I'm telling you the truth and now you're getting me in trouble. And like, that was dumb. So then my brother's tactic was don't say anything and like hide everything or lie or whatever. And then mine was like, well, I'm not going to tell you anything. But I'm still going to follow the rules, but I'm going to do what I want to do within those rules.
That's great.
Like I was sucking and fucking, but I was still at home by 10,
Yeah, you found the best of both worlds there, as much as you could.
I mean, kids are going to do what they're going to do.
They're going to do it. Yeah, that's the thing. And I have these conversations with my parents, bless their hearts. They've come so far and they're so open-minded and they know what I went through back in those days. And like, they understand now. I think kids are just going to do what they're going to do. Yeah. Let them be safe. That's really what it comes down to. And that's really, my background in sex education.
It's harm reduction. What do you want, Ruby? You want to come up? Ruby wants to be a part of this conversation. She's like, wait, harm reduction. I love harm reduction. Here she is. Hi girl. And that's what it is. It's harm reduction and this is something that we learned during the AIDS epidemic was that you can't tell people not to have sex. You can't work on fear. People are going to do what they're going to do because we're all human beings and we all want to have a good time and whatever. And so we have to take the harm reduction approach because that's what people are going to do. That's where you see drug centers that are giving people needles and safe ways to do drugs because it's harm reduction. You're not going to stop the behavior. Maybe through harm reduction, we can, shift behaviors, but at the very least,
Yeah.
we're going to lower the risk involved with doing a behavior, because that behavior is
Totally.
going to happen.
Oh, totally.
And that's where a lot of, sex education really does focus on now,
Yeah.
is like harm reduction. Obviously, there are a lot of people that don't want to be doing that, and they don't want to be teaching kids anything, and they like literally anything.
Stick our
Hi,
head in
Florida,
the
talking to
sand.
you.
Yeah, stick our head in the sand.
Yeah, but
pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah. And so, you coming from purity culture, did you go to a private school, or did you go to a public school?
I went to a public school, but it might as well have been a private school. So the church I went to, when I first started going to it, it blew up overnight practically. And the church actually took place at the high school I ended up going to.
Wait, what?
I know, separation of church and state much.
It does not exist. But wait.
So the high school I went to was the campus for the mega church until the mega church got their own campus. So the people that went to my church were also the people that went to my high school. So we were, and then we moved. Yeah. So we moved. We actually didn't live in the area where this high school / church was. We lived about a half hour away. And by the time I got to high school, we wanted to move closer to it. So we moved down the street from it. And and I wasn't the new kid. Like, even though I was the new kid technically because we had just like relocated there, I wasn't the new kid because I had all of my friends from church that were now all of my schoolmates. So there was, no separation of church and state there. So it was a public school. And
I'm still wrapping my head around this whole thing. So was it just that they would use the school on the weekends, or was there, so there
and the evenings, they did some evening stuff. Yeah.
Was there like churchy stuff around the school?
Oh yeah. Like we would chalk the sidewalks, of like Jesus loves you and stuff like that. And no one would wash it off, and get there on Monday morning and everything's still chalked and posters are still up. And yeah, no, there was, and the thing is like, it was so unspoken. It was just, no one challenged it. No one raised any flags about it. It was so normal. And it was just such a part of this environment. It was like the parents that were the parents of the kids at the school also were the ones that went to church on Sundays and, Bible studies on the weekdays. So there was, it was just this whole system. Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the one Jew that went to your school?
It's funny.
Were there any?
Yeah, there were like maybe three.
Okay.
But I was friends with them. I did. I went to the bat mitzvahs, and one of them had glow sticks. I remember this because it was the only time my mom ever had to call poison control because I thought it was funny, and I bit it, and it like opened in my mouth, and my mom was freaking. Yeah, so I did have like 3 friends that were Jewish.
That was definitely a bar bat mitzvah thing, getting the glow sticks and like putting them in your mouth, and like, oh my God, the amount of glow sticks and blow up guitars that all of us acquired in like big glasses.
Yes.
That shit was fun though, I gotta say.
Yeah, they were the most fun parties.
I did not have a bat mitzvah.
You told me that.
Yeah. So I'll tell the listeners
let's
and
hear
viewers
it.
here. So I did not have a bat mitzvah because I grew up in a conservative Jewish home.
That's right.
Both of us have that shared experience of growing up in a very conservative way, religiously speaking. And so according to what my parents believe and conservative Jews, women don't read from the Torah. And so the whole part of having a bat mitzvah is that you're reading from the Torah. It's your, like welcome into adulthood and blah, blah, blah. And I went to a Hebrew day school. I was bullied in school. I looked different. I was different. I was the weird kid. I would talk to the kids in the corner that nobody else would talk to. So I, damaged myself in that way, or like hurt myself in that way. Cause then I wound up also, but I think there were a lot of factors. Anyway. And so when my parents said that I wasn't going to be able to read from the Torah, I was like, I'm sorry. You want me to be the only child in this school to not read from the Torah and then just have some fucking party, and I have like 2 friends and everybody else makes fun of me when I do things that are literally fashionable right now? Like, no. That's going to be such a hard no for me. And I already didn't believe in religion, and I already didn't believe in any of this stuff. And then to couple that on top of that, and I'm like, how can I possibly, in what realm of reality can I possibly believe in a religion that says I am not good enough to read from a fucking book?
Yeah.
Are you out of your fucking minds? And then you want me to have a party about that? Like, hard no. I did have a bat mitzvah in Israel. That was not my bat mitzvah. It was for my parents. It was for my grandparents. They got what they wanted. I was their little toy, and I got a little bit of money, maybe. I don't remember. But later in life, talking to my dad, he was trying to defend it, and he was like, well, it's because women are pure and they don't have to, and men are just fuck ups. And I was like, Yeah, that's like 100% not the
Yeah.
take here.
Yeah.
It's 100% not.
Yeah.
You're saying that now because you love me, but like,
That's not it.
100% not
That's
it.
not
Also,
it.
like, not going to be the takeaway that I had,
Yeah.
especially at that age. So yeah, it's the contradictions and yeah. Anyway, so bar bat mitzvahs. That was a sidebar. So
Yeah.
your church school, your public church school.
I know.
What, if any, sex education did you even have? Like, how did they even approach that, if they did at all?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a lot of therapy fodder over the years. I personally learned what sex was when I was like 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I'm a 90s kid. I watched, Hocus Pocus came out in 1993. And I don't know if you remember the part in it where he's a virgin.
Oh, the virgin!
He has to be a virgin to light the candle.
Yeah.
So he lights the candle and I'm like, what's that? I don't know what a virgin is. I was like 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to my babysitter and I was like, what's a virgin? And she's, 16, 17. And she's like, oh, how do I answer this? It's a person who's not married. So,
oh my God.
So then I proceed to go to school the next day and spread the whole word virgin all over the place. And I'm like, you're a virgin and you're a virgin and I'm a virgin and we're all virgins here together. And it was such a moment because my teacher pulled me aside. She's like, I don't think you know what that means. Called my mom. My mom pulled me aside and when I got home that night and told me what a virgin was, of course, in very like 6, 7-year-old terms. So that was my introduction, but I did learn, she did use the word sex. So that's one thing I will say. My parents were very, they're very like educated scientific people, which is, I know we've talked about, it's always interesting when scientific people go into religion and try to explain science to people. But my mom did it right. She used the actual terminology. She, of course it had the tinges of, it's a man and a woman, it's heteronormative, of course. It's within marriage, it's to make babies, blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of like my first little intro. And then in high school, we really didn't talk about it. We had the church that I went to when we turned 14, or I guess it was our freshman year. So it was before freshman year, they had purity camps. So this is something that I've talked about, which is just absolutely horrifying. This was my introduction to high school. So and this is my new high school, but it's new old high school. So they pull us, they take us to this weekend long purity camp, and it's girls only and boys only, of course. And the whole weekend we're doing things like, typical summer camp stuff, trust falls, all fun, games, like capture the flag, all those kinds of things. But there's like this insidious message that is underneath it. And it's just that we're young and pure and we want to stay young and pure. And at the end of, of course, there's Bible studies, there's discussions, there's sermons, there's worship music, all of it around the idea of we need to stay pure. And of course, we're 14 years old. We don't know what that really means. Yeah. We don't even know what, like we really just don't have any idea what it means to actually stay pure. We have ideas and guesses, but we also, aren't allowed to watch the same things that everyone else watches. And we don't have experience or exposure with what sex is or what relationships look like outside of the church. And so we're just told to stay pure. And to us, that just means no PIV penetrative sex.
Yeah.
That's really all they told us. And at the end of this purity weekend, I still remember this so vividly. Our middle-aged male pastor gave us all little teeny tiny boxes. They were like maybe the size of a small Post-it note, and they were wrapped with a bow on them. And inside were padlocks. And he gave us these little boxes, and we all were to keep this little box with the padlock. And then he gave us necklaces with the key. And he said, you're taking this oath, you're taking this vow of purity now. That means no penetrative sex. Well, he didn't say the word penetrative, but that's heavily implied. No sex until your wedding night. On your wedding night, take the key, wear it on, underneath your dress, whatever, and give the box to your husband with the padlock. And I had that padlock and key until I was actually late 20s. I kept it. Of course, I lost my virginity way back when I was 17, so way before I even got married. But yeah, I that was my introduction, and we were supposed to stay pure, and we were supposed to take these purity vows, and we were supposed to, anytime this was at the beginning of high school, right before we went into high school, and then we get into high school, if we make any kind of transgression, we are supposed to atone for them and tell like every single detail. I just remember having, and I was such a, flirty, I'm a Gemini. I was such a flirty girl. And I, had, I was just attracted to all the misfits and all the weirdos were like, there was just platonic and romantic and sexual attraction and all kinds of attraction. I did not know what to do with it. And I don't know. I couldn't follow it. It just didn't work for me. But I still internalized all of it. So I'm still working through that now. It's still something to deal with. That's how I learned about sex, though, was through the eyes of purity.
There's so much I don't like in there.
I know.
There's so much that I don't like.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so, my God, it's so bad. So, okay. So that was 14.
Yeah.
Before that, had any of you received any sort of formal sex education, or was that like truly everybody's introduction to sexuality, the functioning of your body? Like, did you even learn about your body or how periods work or anything like that?
I did, because my dad's a doctor. So I did learn about periods. I learned about it. It was so different because I learned about it, but I still had the shame. So where the church and the purity part came in was all this shame about how my body works. So I'm learning how my body is working. I did have a couple lessons, I think maybe when I was in 6th grade, about like, this is what a period is. If you've experienced it, you're going to probably get it soon, things like that. But didn't learn how to, do anything. I didn't learn. Yeah. I had to learn it all through kind of asking older friend, my friends' older sisters or things like that. So, and it wasn't that I didn't feel comfortable coming to my parents. It's just that I had so much shame.
But there's also, it's not comfortable to come to your parents.
Totally.
Like for the most part, like it's a wonderful thing when the parent-child relationship, we do want that open communication, and we want kids to be able to talk to their parents and just have like free-flowing conversations and be able to ask, but it's also uncomfortable for both sides. And that's why it's so important that we do keep good, accurate, age-appropriate sex education in schools, because like parents are, first of all, not educated. They're not equipped. It's an awkward conversation to have. Like there's a lot going on there for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But it's so important to have those older people around you. Like that's definitely something that's coming up in a lot of episodes. Like older sisters, mostly.
Older sisters, babysitters.
Shout out to my older sister. She's amazing. Hi, miss.
Did you ever see Never Been Kissed?
Oh, was that Drew Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore. So there's this scene I'm thinking of, and it's she's back in high school, and her friend Molly is played by Molly Shannon. And she comes in. Her. Yeah, it's so hilarious because she says Drew Barrymore's pretending to be a high schooler. She's an undercover journalist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And Molly Shannon's character is like her friend at the newspaper, and she comes to like check on her and say hi, and the teacher goes, "Oh, our sex ed teacher is here," and she walks in, and she's like, "Oh, I have to actually play the sex ed teacher now," and she has no idea what to say. So she goes up to the front and she's like, "Sex, okay. You like a guy, you do it. Sometimes he calls, sometimes he doesn't."
Accurate.
I just remember watching that. I'm like, okay, I get sex now.
Okay, I get it. Yeah. I mean, listen, if that's all you learn, it's pretty accurate, unfortunately. Oh boy, I could do a whole episode on ghosting.
Right? You should, definitely. There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah, I should find someone who's maybe ghosted on me or who I've ghosted on and be like,
ooh,
hey, come
I
on the
love
podcast.
that idea.
No, fuck that. Oh God, I did have a question for you, and now I'm just thinking about ghosting. But okay, so I'm curious because there's so much emphasis on purity and the whole lock and the key and these promises and this and that. When did people really start having sex? So you were 17.
Yeah.
But I know in purity culture, oftentimes kids are doing everything.
There's loopholes.
Everything. They're finding every fucking loophole.
There are loopholes. Yes. I would say my circle of friends, we started having sex, like actual like penetrative sex. I would say and maybe, we were playing with oral and things like that, maybe 16, 15, 16. We didn't really know what we were doing. I remember, oh my God, I remember one time, like with I had a boyfriend at the time, and we were talking about having sex, and we had no idea how to get condoms and what size of condoms to get. And so we were like he asked an older friend who told him to like measure things with like a toilet paper, cardboard toilet paper. Yeah. And it was just like, we had no idea what we were doing. But about 16 is when I think things took a turn for the real.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we've heard about it. We've watched stuff about it. Let's try it.
Let's do the thing.
Let's try it. So yeah, it wasn't, but I was 17. So I was with my, it's really ironic because I lost my virginity to my second husband. He's now my husband. So it was my high school sweetheart. We dated for 3 years. I actually lost my virginity to him, and I'm so glad that we had that experience because he lost his to me, and we broke up after 3 years. Spent 10 years apart. I got married to a completely different person. Was married for 7 years. That marriage, I left that marriage, and my now husband and I got back together. So yeah, joke's on you, purity culture. I did marry the guy I lost my virginity to.
Yeah, but you weren't even trying.
Wasn't even trying.
I love that story. And, I think one of the hard things in relationships is that we want to build this story of this is my forever person. And I think oftentimes when we meet people, immediately we're categorizing them as like, this is a friend, this is husband material, this is wife material, this is girlfriend, this is boyfriend, this is just a fuck boy, this is this is that. Like, we're trying to categorize these people immediately. And I'm sure to a degree you were doing that as a young person too. But there's also a lot of truth in what's meant to be will be. Yeah. My sister has a similar story where she dated her husband when they were really young and they were in love, and it was like puppy love, and then they were in high school, but then their lives took different paths and then they found each other again. And so I think that's something, we put so much pressure on relationships, and we're often also as kids taught that like that was the thing when I was with my high school boyfriend, that I was like, I want to be with you forever, instead of being like, let's appreciate these relationships for however long they last. And listen, maybe you are my forever person. I literally don't know what's going to happen in 20 years from now. Like, there was no way for you to ever know when you broke up with him that he was going to be your husband. Yeah. No way to know that. No. But it was probably so stressful at the time, and like such heartache and heartbreak. And, it's so interesting how life plays out, and you truly do not know what the next day is going to bring, let alone the next 20 years. Oh my God. It makes me think of what Dan Savage says on his podcast. He says, that relationships are successful if they end and you're just a better person. You leave the person better than when you found them. And that doesn't mean, just because a relationship ends doesn't mean it's not successful. Like, all relationships end in some way. Like, even if you're together your whole lives, you die. Yeah. Like relationships end. So giving them kind of that arbitrary like place in your life isn't really, it should just be fluid, just like relationships, just like people are. They change, they morph, they have purposes at their time. And we truly need to give more respect and love for casual relationships as well. Yeah. Like, we think just because somebody is our sexual partner or fuck buddy, whatever you want to call it, or just like a situationship or whatever the fuck, we think that we don't need to give them the same love and respect, and that there's not the same opportunity for self-growth in those situations too. Yeah. But if we treated every relationship as something that's sacred in our lives for however long, like if I'm with you for one night only, I can have a one night stand and make that, I want that one night stand to be the best relationship it could possibly be. Yeah. And if we could approach relationships, long-term, short-term, whatever, just being like, this time that we have together, just in this moment, not even like this full relationship, but just like today, this one date, this one thing that we're doing together. If I can make this as good as possible, then I'm going to have more pleasure in my life, and I'm going to have more fulfillment in my life. Yeah. And when a relationship comes to a point where like you really just can't get to that place of making it really good, and it doesn't feel good to be in it on a regular basis, that's when you know, okay, great, it's time to walk away, but I did everything I could to make this as good as possible. Of course, you can only control yourself, but I think there's so much in this topic alone in terms of casual and long-term and what we put into different things. So I love the story of you and your husband, because you lost your virginity to this guy in thinking that you're being some rebel to purity culture. And now you're like long since left purity culture behind, and he's your husband. And there's actually something, we don't need to touch this if you don't feel comfortable with it. But the ramifications of purity culture and how you are feeling that in your relationship now.
Oh my God. I speak to this, ad nauseum at times. Sometimes Eric is like, okay, we talk about this all the time. You write about it all the time. I still feel purity culture shame. I think one of the things I like to talk about in my work is how pole dancing has really helped me embody that, like, just get embodied, because I'm so disembodied from purity culture. Purity culture taught me that, my body isn't my own, and it's not to be trusted. And, it's just this vessel that is sinful, also because I'm a woman, inherently sinful, inherently sexual. It's my job to stay modest, to cover myself up, to, that made me so alienated from my body, so alienated to the point where I had never really experienced myself as my body until pole dancing, until my early 30s, like truly that. So yeah, I'm still dealing with kind of the ramifications of purity culture. I still have, I even told Eric, my husband, recently, I still have shame after a night of sex. Like, I still wake up in the morning, like deeply ashamed of what I did. And I'm like, I'm literally within the bounds of what purity culture told me that I'm okay to have sex. Like, I'm literally within these bounds. I'm married. I am in this heteronormative, patriarchal, in their eyes, marriage, and I'm still just covered in shame the next morning. I can't shake it. It's just something I have to kind of witness as it comes. So when I do have that shame, I'm okay. Thank you for your service. I know that you're not real, and I'm going to send you on your way, and I'm going to go have sex with my husband again.
It's such a common thing from people that come out of purity culture, even if you still believe in it. Like, even if you are still devout, there's a very real experience where you're taught sex is bad. You shouldn't be sexual. It's just for making babies. It's just for your husband. You can only do it in this one container. That's the only thing. And as soon as you become married, and this happens with men as well, by the way, this is not just for women in purity culture.
Absolutely.
This absolutely happens with men too, because you as a man are taught, don't do that to her. Don't make her a whore. Like, she's sacred, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's there to make you babies. She's going to be your wife and your children's mother. And that has a very certain connotation and characteristics and all these things. And suddenly you find two people that are married that spent 18 to 25 years thinking sex is bad. You can't have it. Don't be a whore. Pleasure is bad. These things are evil. You're going to go to hell, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, because you say a couple of words and put a piece of metal on a finger, now you're supposed to be these sexual gods and goddesses, and you're supposed to be able to have sex and have it be fun and free. And by the way, it's still always going to be on the man's watch. It is something that so many people struggle through that we really need to talk about more as it pertains to, even, again, people who are still devout. You can be a devout Christian, Catholic, Jew, whatever. I mean, it's not as much in Judaism at all. Like, we don't really talk about it that much. It's all about be fruitful and multiply. They want you to fuck for sure, because we want more Jews in the world. Yeah, you can only fuck a Jew though. Like, don't get that twisted. But it's such a huge thing for people to work through.
Yeah,
because now they want to have sex and they want to be having fun
Mhm.
and they want to be feeling pleasure and they want to be connecting with their partners in this way, and they can't.
And they wonder why, because
Yeah.
they wonder what they're doing wrong. Like
Yeah.
they've been promised this whole time, if you wait to have sex on your wedding night, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. You are going to have the best sex life in the world. You are just going, I mean, it's going to be a sleepover every single night with your
Mhm.
husband, your heteronormative husband or partner or whoever. And then they get there and they're like, I don't know how my own body works.
Yeah.
Let alone how your body works.
Because you can't masturbate, by the way.
No,
That's not allowed.
No, I don't know how either of this works. What are we supposed to do? It's like it's such a letdown.
Yeah.
It's such a letdown.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. It just breaks my heart for the people that are still in it. And there's more systems now of support for people who are recovering from that trauma. Personally, I went through a lot of it myself the last 7 years. So there is a lot of support. There's a lot of trauma-informed therapy. There's a lot of like EMDR helps a lot with that. I can attest to that. I mean, your mileage may vary. I'm not a psychiatrist, but it really worked for me. Support groups and then pole dancing really has made all the difference. That's really, I was on my way to recovering and like learning how to work with my body, learning how to, listen to her is one thing. I give her the pronouns her and she, just because I want to treat her like I treat my most precious friends. I want to listen to her. What does she need? And pole dancing's really helped me. And that's something that that connection is something that's just not allowed in purity culture.
Yeah, I mean that's why I do the workshops that I do.
Yeah,
that's why I do Covenant Harlots,
exactly.
because and it is why I mix sexuality, like sex coaching. I don't even know. I'm never going to figure out how to position this whole thing. It's so weird. But that's why I do the sex coaching and the mind work, and like, let's work through some of these things that all of us are experiencing in different ways. And then let's embody that
100%.
And let's get into our bodies and let's be sexy and let's be sexual and let's be sensual and let's do all of those things because we can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
We're allowed to do all that
allowed
stuff.
to.
And these are all tools to get us closer to our bodies and reality and all of it. So, and I'm curious, what do you remember, if anything, from those classes? Like after the purity camp and after that stuff, what do you remember them actually teaching you in a more formal way? Outside of don't give it up.
About sex.
Or even about your body.
About your body. Well, definitely, you can't trust it. That was one of the big things. You cannot trust your body. Your body is going to be tempted endlessly. So yeah, it feels good when you're, making out and grinding up against your boyfriend. But that's the devil. That's the devil. It's the devil tempting you. It's your body. It's not actually your body. That's what we were told. It is not your body. It is not you. It is Satan himself coming in to pull you away from this purity and make you, tempt you into becoming a chewed up piece of gum, which was their favorite analogy.
Ew, really?
Have you heard that? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was the favorite that was the favorite analogy by like the late 90s, like Y2K era purity culture was you don't want to be a chewed up piece of gum.
Ew.
Yeah.
Now, is that for the girls?
For the girls. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was also this like toxic masculinity for men too, where it was like if you give in, and I, obviously can't speak to this, but I've talked to a lot of people who experienced it where they tell the young boys, if you give in to your temptations, like you aren't being a warrior for God. They put it in this very toxic, like battle, like you're in a battle with the devil. Ugh. You are in a battle with your body. That was one thing. I know the boys very heavily got this like warrior, like violent imaging when it comes to their body. So I'm sure that there's some really deep disconnection there for men growing up in purity culture. But women, we were just told, you're going to be a flower without petals. You're going to be a chewed up piece of gum. You're going to, you're just the notch on the belt. Yeah. You're just ruined. Yeah. No one wants a chewed up piece of gum. So yeah, it was very much don't trust your body, very much your body isn't yours. That was one of the things I had to really overcome was, no, my body is mine. It's totally mine. It's not God's. It's not my future husband's. It's mine. I can do with it what I want. And yeah, Yeah, those were the main, I would say in terms of anatomy and like physiology, there wasn't really anything I experienced in terms, like, I didn't learn about it. I really didn't. I had to kind of learn all that on my own. I remember I was in 8th grade and I was with my best friend at the time. She had an older sister who was so cool. And we went to her parent or her grandparents' place in Santa Barbara for spring break one year. And her older sister brought her boyfriend, so they locked them. The parents and grandparents were out one day, so she and the boyfriend locked themselves in the bathroom. And I turned to my friend. I was like, "What are they doing?" And my friend was like, "Actually, this is how it goes down." And she like showed me like exactly with, I don't even remember what it was, but she like showed me like the motion. I was like, that's weird. I thought you just put it in and you just sit there. And like I had no idea. I was 13 years old and I had no idea what sex actually looked like what the actual motion of it looked like. So yeah, that was I had to, like, again, learn from my friends. So
there's a really great Reddit and an Instagram for the Reddit that's called Ask Men. It's a subreddit, Ask Men.
Yes.
And it's so good. And I think the question may have been like, what did you learn really late in life about sex? And that was one of the guys was like, I thought you just put it in and stayed there.
God.
And it wasn't until he was in his 20s, like 25 or something, had been having sex for like a while. And he would just put his penis in and sit there.
I'm just picturing those poor women.
Those poor women. I mean, listen, I maybe would prefer that to jackrabbiting. I don't know, but like,
isn't that what they call soaking? I think that's what the Mormon kids called soaking.
Oh, yeah. Because you know what? I think, because, this was it. This is purity culture. Yeah. Because what he was talking about was these loopholes that people are creating for themselves. And he was like, well, I thought if you go in and out, that's what sex is. But if you just go in once, if you just stay in, that's not sex. And maybe like an early girlfriend told him that or something. But that's the problem, is that besides all of these truly, truly detrimental, traumatic messages that you're getting about your own body and your own self-worth and ownership, and the messages that our bodies are literally built to give us in order to guide us in the right directions, you're also getting such a plethora of misinformation.
Oh my God.
So much misinformation.
I got to tell you, okay, so I can't speak to this like personally, but I do a ton of research on purity culture, obviously, because it's what I talk about in my podcast and everything. But I heard that there's this new thing called jump humping, and it's a new loophole for kids.
It sounds terrible. Okay. Jump humping?
It's called jump humping, and it's basically
can I guess what it is?
Can guess.
Oh my God.
Guess.
Is this... Okay. Is it that you put the penis in the vagina and then somebody else is jumping on the bed?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. That's exactly it. So I guess this is a new loophole. This is a brand new loophole. And it's on TikTok.
If you're not the one pumping. Oh my
I saw it on TikTok. So I can't attest to it, but I know that it's a thing. It's a loophole that these poor kids.
I simply cannot.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Thank God TikTok and podcasts and YouTube and Instagram and thank God fuck God. Thank technology and human beings with smart brains for creating all of these things.
I know. Could you imagine if we had it when we were kids?
I mean, I feel like I was pretty well informed because I had been listening to I was listening to sex radio and watching shows as early as I can remember. I remember being 8 years old and listening to this stuff because I always found it fascinating and I wanted to know more and I wanted to learn more and I wanted to understand. So this has always been something in my world that I was always curious about. The first time that I had sex, I was I just want to know what this is. Everything for me, even my first kiss was nothing special. And I'm pretty sure an entire baseball team was watching us in the stairwell. But it was just for me, it's always been, I'm very experience oriented. So it's always been the experience and I want to understand this thing. That's why I will always be in school because I'm just certification on top of certification because I'm I just want to understand. I just want to know more. I just want to keep learning. And so for me, it was always that experience. So I feel I was pretty well informed and I couldn't even tell you how outside of those shows, but even that, my family had HBO.
Yeah.
So that's privilege
Mhm.
and that's access and all these things. And so I'm just so grateful that we have
Yeah.
these avenues. And so for you, how did you begin to crawl out of the purity culture and get more accurate information? Where did your accurate information actually come from?
That's a good question. I think I always had one foot out the door. I was a bit rebellious my senior year in high school. That's when I started dating my now husband. And I just, there was one, I remember one day my mom took me to see my pediatrician because at the time I was still 17. And I remember I sat in her, like it was just a checkup and she pulled me aside and she's like, hey, do you need anything? Like my mom was in the room with me and she pulled me aside when my mom left and she's like, do you need anything? Like, do you want to speak to me one-on-one? Because I kind of had that look and I'm so grateful for her for doing this.
Yeah.
So I said no at the moment and I said, I'll come back. I went home, at the time I was 17, so I just had gotten my license, and I told my mom I was going to run an errand, and I went right back over, and she gave me birth control. So that was amazing. I was 17 years old. I was finally able to have sex with my boyfriend at the time, and from there, like we just kind of he went to a Jesuit all boys high school, so he kind of has the same like hangups. I don't want to say the same hangups, but we have a very similar overlapping story there. And we just tried stuff on each other. And I think listening to what you were just talking about, your firsts, and I had a lot of firsts with my now husband, and I just think there's that sex is just such an ordinary thing.
Yeah.
That the emphasis on the first time of anything in that purity culture, that conservative upbringing, and that wasn't just part of the church. That bled into the secular at the time too. You had Jessica Simpson and Britney Spears talking about their first times and all that. So it was very much in the secular too. But there's such a like heavy emphasis on the first, and I think that's the thing that was so detrimental to us as kids learning about sex is like those first times, because it puts so much pressure on those first times, and nothing turns out the way that you think it's going to. And it just, there's so much like embarrassment and shame and everything by putting that so much pressure on that first experience. And that was, I think Eric and I really explored those firsts together without any shame and embarrassment. And, we ended up breaking up 3 years later. And at the time I had no idea what to do. So I was too tired of fighting purity culture. And I started dating this guy. And I wanted to live with him and I wanted to have sex with him, and was not allowed. So I married him. And I was 22 years old. My prefrontal cortex hadn't even fully developed. And I married him at 22. And it was during that relationship, I was so disembodied and disconnected and depressed that about, I would say, 6 years into our marriage is when I started kind of going, like teaching myself new things, listening to sex podcasts, because podcasts were brand new at the time. I started reading new books. I started, making new friends. And slowly but surely, I kind of unlearned a lot of those things that I'd like been, indoctrinated with. And then, I left him at right before my 30th birthday. And that was when that's when I had the Trampage and the whole the whole thing where I was like, I'm going to learn all of it. I'm going to learn everything that I didn't know.
Yeah.
It just blew that door wide open for me. And then Eric came back into my life and now we're here.
Yay.
Yeah.
We love that. And thinking about first also, and you were in that situation where it was with somebody that you loved and it was really special. There's also so much pressure for that.
Yeah.
And that was never my experience.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't the girl that like boys loved and wanted to date and blah, blah, blah. Like and I do think that has to do with how I look and that I am not a white girl. Like I present way more white than I did when I was younger. I was always super dark, and my dad is Yemenite. So like I have that type of skin and I have dark features, and I was always the exotic one. I was not the pure one. I was not the one that you bring home to your parents. And still that's 100% still the case.
Yeah,
like I'm very much not the woman I don't think that men see as like that. Like I'm way more of a fantasy than I am of like a whole human being. And that was throughout my life. So my firsts were not in situations where like it was these boyfriends that loved me and blah, blah, blah. And I think I don't know if I ever really felt that bad about it per se. I think I just always recognized that was never going to be my experience, that was just not, I'm just not the girl that gets asked out on dates, and I'm not the girl that gets asked out to prom. And you know, like I would see the other pretty white blonde girls getting that, but that wasn't for me. So, but I think that's also wrapped up in, so many cultural, I mean, that's all wrapped up in culture, and how I was treated was a result of culture, and the fact that I was the exotic one with a big butt and like all that shit, and the sexualization of me. You know, obviously now I embody it, and now I'm like, yeah, you know what? Fuck it. But I'm owning it. And that is how I choose to perform, unless I'm doing kids improv. You know, it's a whole journey. And I think that there's a lot of pressure, and too much pressure on your first having to be this big love experience and whatever, as opposed to just like, this is just a thing I want to do.
It's just a thing. It's
just
the back of the car
somewhere.
Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sarah, it's time for a pop quiz.
Ooh, I like a pop quiz.
Yeah. What? I don't know why I said it like that.
I'm here for it.
What is the most common symptom of an STI?
Ooh, that's a good question. Most common symptom, would it be itching? Scratching?
That is a good one, but it is no symptoms at all.
You know, that was going to be my first guess. That I was like, this has to be a like some kind of a trick question, but I get, that was going to be my first guess.
The most common symptom of an STI is no symptoms at all, especially with herpes. HPV, herpes, chlamydia, gonorrhea, all of those things. Most commonly, people don't actually know that they have STIs, and they're out here fucking and spreading. That's why it's really important that we do get tested on a regular basis, that even if you're in a monogamous partnership, because things like herpes, for example, which it's very hard to test for herpes unless you have cause for it, and most doctors actually won't do it. You can request it, and you need to request it. It's a separate test.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, herpes is a separate test, and HIV is a separate test. Your standard test is going to only have the top 3, which is gonorrhea, syphilis, and chlamydia.
Interesting.
So if you're getting tested, they're just going to give you the top 3. They're not going to give you herpes. They're not going to give you HIV. They're not going to give you Hep C. They're not going to give you anything like that. You have to request a full panel. And if you want to include herpes and HIV, you need to request that as well. So when you are getting tested, always request that. You want to test for sure between partners. If you have not tested, or maybe a condom fell off or something like that, 3 weeks after you engage in sexual contact is when you want to test it. You need to give it at least 3 weeks, because viruses do take time to develop in your body. If we want to learn anything from COVID, we can learn that. And if we had proper sex education, we would have known that for COVID as well. But they do take time to develop in your body. And again, some can be dormant, like herpes can be dormant in your body like forever, but you could be passing it. Also, it's really common, so let's destigmatize it.
Oh my God,
who cares? I have herpes, who fucking cares? It's not a big deal.
I got HPV. I still have to get, regular screenings every single year because I got HPV. I got a colpo, all of it. It happens. Yeah, exactly.
It happens. And the vast majority of people, especially with herpes 1, which is of the mouth, they're not telling people. They're just not disclosing it. Yeah. So listen, get yourself tested. Even if you don't have symptoms, just get it done.
Advocate for yourself.
Yeah, advocate for yourself. Advocate for your partners. Have the conversation before you engage in sexual contact. Do it outside of the bedroom. You don't want to be doing it right when everyone's all hot.
You can make it sexy too.
Yeah,
like it feels like that would be a fun, like sexy thing to do. Like, ooh, we're gonna be doing it later. We're gonna be talking about it right now.
Yeah, it's like, hey, pretty sure we're gonna fuck.
Yeah,
so we should have.
That's pretty hot. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, that's how I generally
I think that's pretty hot.
I'm
all for it.
It's time for us to have a little conversation around sex and sexual health, and like, who are you fucking? What are you doing? Like, let's just talk about it. Normalize having the conversation, because again, the most common symptom is no symptoms at all. And that's how the majority of things are spread, is that people are not getting tested. They're not having conversations. People don't know their status. It is so much safer to have sex with somebody who knows their status, even if they're positive for something like herpes, because they know how to manage it.
Yeah.
that's just the truth is that if you know your status, then you know what your signs, what your symptoms are, when you're more likely to transmit it to somebody else, how to navigate that. So, just that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You wouldn't get in a car and tell someone, not tell someone that the seatbelt's broken if the seatbelt's broken. You'd be like, this is the same thing. This is your health. This is your body. This is your life.
It's just a sign of respect too. It's advocating for yourself. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of maturity. Yeah. It's just like, we just have to have the conversations. Yeah. It's so easy to do. Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more we normalize and casualize these conversations. I don't know if that's a word, but I like it.
I like it.
I like it.
We're making it a word.
Yeah, casualize. But the more that we do that, then the more informed people are. And there's nothing sexier than informed consent.
I think that's true. Yeah. That's very sexy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Is there anything that we did not touch upon that you wanted to raise?
No, I think we got it all. That was a great. Yeah, I think we got it all. Yeah. That was a great episode. I love it.
How can people find you?
Oh my goodness. You could find me on my website, Reclaim Effing Everything. That's reclaim, EFFING everything.com. That is my podcast and newsletter. And same Instagram handle, Reclaim Effing Everything, and sarahspurlock.com.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you for coming on the show. Purity culture, man. I think, it's so many of us have religious trauma that this was a really important conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, you know what to do.
5 stars.
5 stars. Woo! Like it, subscribe, send it to a friend, especially if you have a friend that has been through purity culture or is going through it or is having any sort of struggle with it. Please, 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 please share this episode with them because I think it's going to really be impactful for those people. But, share it in the wide range too. Yeah. If you have a question that you would like me to ask a guest in terms of our pop quizzes, you can leave it in the 5-star review and I will ask it if it makes sense to ask it. If I can ask it, I need to put that disclaimer on. And I'll shout you out too. So subscribe, blah, blah, blah. You know what to do. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Arielle. It's been fun. And thank you, everyone.
Deuces. Bye.
Bye.